Some shows don't need a celebrity narrator to introduce the show, but this show does. 2 men, 8 kids, co-created by 2 different women, 13 multi-million-dollar businesses. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Thrivetime Show.
3, 2, 1, here we go!
Started from the bottom, now we here. Started from the bottom, and we'll show you how to get here. Started from the bottom, now we here. Started from the bottom, now we here. Started from the bottom,
Yes, and yes. Thrive Nation, on today's show, we're talking about how to create a team culture of high performance. Josh Wilson, are you prepared to enter into the dojo of mojo?
No, I'm ready. I'm here.
Are you feeling the flow?
I definitely am. Got it working.
We've got Magic Mike Robbins on the phone. Mike Robbins, welcome to the Thrivetime Show. How are you, sir?
Hey, I'm good. Glad to be on here with you guys. I can feel the energy, and I'm already fired up.
Quick question for you. It's a convenient nickname. It's probably obvious. How often do people call you Magic Mike?
You know, actually, hardly ever. When you just said that, I'm like, I can't remember the last time someone called me Magic Mike, but feel free to call me that. It sounds good.
You don't have enough obvious friends there, Josh. He doesn't have enough obvious friends there.
Did they do the Mikey likes it? Did they do that to you all the time?
No, you know, it's funny. Like my 11-year-old, Rosie, our younger daughter, used to call me Little Mikey, which drove me crazy because kids called me Mikey when I was a kid because it was the Life cereal commercial. Hey, Mikey, he likes it. But it's been years since people called me Mikey.
Well, Mike, you have done consulting now with huge companies. I mean, Google, Wells Fargo, Microsoft, Schwab, eBay, the NBA, the Oakland A's, huge companies. You're the author of 5 books. Tell us how it all started, though. Walk us back to the very beginning. What was life like for you growing up?
So I grew up in Oakland, California, in the San Francisco Bay Area, where I still live. Don't live in Oakland, live on the other side of the bay. But I was a baseball player, and was pretty good at it. Got drafted out of high school by the Yankees. Didn't end up signing with the Yankees because I got a chance to play baseball in college at Stanford. Went to Stanford, then got drafted by the Kansas City Royals out of Stanford, signed a pro contract, and I was on my way to play pro baseball, which was awesome. Unfortunately for me, at 23 years old, I threw one pitch, tore ligaments in my elbow, and that was the end of my career in baseball. I mean, it didn't end that day, but 2 years and 3 surgeries later, I was finally forced to retire and had to, figure out what to do with the rest of my life, which I didn't really have a plan B or C. It was all baseball for me.
What year did you have the injury?
Got hurt in 97. Ended up finally retiring in early 99.
How come you decided not to go old school and do the knuckleball?
It's a good question. It's funny. I was just thinking about this yesterday for some reason. People would often ask me interesting questions like, can't you just pitch with your right hand? I was a left-handed pitcher. And I'm I've spent all my life doing this. The knuckleball thing, my hands aren't really that big, and I never could throw a knuckleball. Like if I could have figured out how to throw a knuckleball or pitch right-handed, I definitely would have done one or both of those things, but neither of those seem to really be in the cards for me.
I want to go back to your middle school dance, high school dance. It's in a cafeteria somewhere, a gym. Beautiful location. It's probably a disco ball. Were your school dances in a gym or a cafeteria?
They were in a gym.
In a gym. And who was the first girl that you asked on the dance floor that said yes? And what jam was playing?
Oh goodness gracious.
The
girl that popped into my mind was Julie Anderson in 8th grade. And so I grew up in Oakland, man. We listened to a lot of hip hop, a lot of rap music.
Yeah.
And the Beastie Boys and Run DMC both came out with albums in 86 and 87, back-to-back, Raising Hell and License to Ill.
Dude.
So it would have either been It's Tricky or Brass Monkey that was on, and we were, dancing to that.
Really? Okay. So I'm just going to take us back for a minute. Yes. Let me just give you 30 seconds of it. Here we go. Oh, yeah. Oh,
that's impressive.
Dude, I have not heard this forever. Come on now. If you're in quarantine, get out the quarantini today, folks. Get out some Corona and quarantini. Listen to some Brass Monkey. If you're stuck at home, crank this hit up and make your wife dance with you. All right. Wow. Okay. Now I just wanted to go there.
That is impressive, by the way.
Oh,
I don't think anybody else has busted out Brass Monkey after 2 seconds after me saying it. So
well,
nicely
that's
done.
how I build rapport. It usually ends in Josh. It usually goes really bad.
Yeah.
Really well.
But
or
you
really poorly.
You recover though most of the time.
I recover.
Most
Yeah.
time.
So now we move on. So you're out of baseball. You're done with the baseball thing. It's got to be tough emotionally when the big dream is gone, especially when you're that good.
Yeah, it was tough, man. I mean, it had been, that was who I was. I mean, I was Mike, the baseball player, and so it took me a while to sort of get my footing under me after that.
So how do you go from the baseball player to your career that you do now? I mean, when did you first start to gain some traction?
Well, the thing was when I was playing, I was interested. I was reading a lot of books about sort of mindset and psychology and sort of personal growth for myself, and I was also fascinated by team chemistry and team dynamics, even as an athlete. I mean, I love the game, but I was always interested in how come some teams, we got really good players, but the team's not so good, and other teams, it's like the players are, talent's decent, team's really good. We beat other teams that have better, players. I didn't understand that, but I found it fascinating, and I ended up back home in the Bay Area after baseball, and I got a job in the late '90s working in the .com world, the tech world, which was, booming at the time. And I get this job at this startup, and it was interesting. I didn't really know what the heck I was going to do necessarily, but I found right away, this is way different than sports. But that whole team chemistry thing that I erroneously thought was a sports thing, that has nothing to do with sports. That's a human thing. In business, they just call it culture. It's the same thing as chemistry. It's just that intangible quality, or those sets of qualities that bring groups together, and we can do something great, even greater sort of than the sum of the parts, or it gets in the way and creates, all kinds of problems. And so what ended up happening is I worked for a couple startups, and then the .com bubble burst in sort of late 2000, and I lost my job like many other people at that time, which wasn't I was bummed and a little worried, okay, what am I going to do next? But it was kind of a blessing because it gave me the time and the space to really think, well, what do I really want to do? If I could do anything, what could I do? A mentor asked me that question, and I said, well, I would write and I would speak and I would try to share some of what I learned in sports and in business and in life, both through some successes, but also through failures and disappointments that might benefit people individually, personally, but also I think I have some curiosity and some insight into what makes a great team, and I want to learn more about that. So for the last almost 2 decades, that's really what I've been studying and what I've been writing about, the mindset that it takes for us individually to be successful and to persevere, and then the qualities that teams need to really create the kind of environment where everyone can perform at the highest level.
Now, I played basketball and sports like that growing up, and I've always been a reader. I like to read. But most of the guys on the teams I played with were reading magazines about chicks. I don't know if they were reading necessarily, but I'm just saying were you the only guy on the team reading? I mean, were there other people reading? Were there a lot of reading?
It was funny. When I was in the minor leagues, I remember being, long bus rides, and I did 2 things. I would read books, not magazines, and the books had no pictures in them. And I also was writing in a journal, and the guys on my team were like, Robbins, what the heck are you reading? And what are you writing in that book there, right? And I used to joke with them, so I'm writing about you, and I'm going to write a book and tell all kinds of terrible stories about all the stuff that you do, which would, of course, freak them out and was not true. But yeah, I was a little weird. I mean, to my teammates, they thought I was a little strange in that regard. But I found, especially once I got into pro baseball, very team-oriented. I really enjoyed a lot of my teammates, and we had fun together. But there was a lot of time and a lot of downtime.
Yeah.
And I'm an extrovert, but I actually turned more inward and started reading more, started listening to more in those days, cassette tapes on different topics of things that were interesting to me, and started writing. It was really when I started to write for the first time. I always hated writing in college. I hated writing papers, and when I had a deadline or a topic I was forced to write about. But I started writing in my journal, and most of my journal stuff was just me sort of processing some of my own, feelings and thoughts, but kind of contemplating different things, and that sort of led, to all these years later. I still prefer speaking than writing, but, somehow or another I've figured out how to write 5 books, which still sort of surprises me and my wife and just about everybody who knows me.
Well, I want to go into rapid fire mode here. But before I really crank up the intensity, I have one more question about baseball, then we'll move on. People are just fascinated about the backgrounds of our guests. Craziest thing that happened in your minor league career? Craziest thing, craziest player, teammate you were with, craziest behind-the-scene dugout moment? I mean, what was the thing where was it when you picked up a cup and you thought it was coffee and it was filled with coal spit? Or what was the craziest thing?
We had a situation one night in Durham, North Carolina, playing against the Durham Bulls, where one of our guys, our closer, was getting heckled by the drunk fans in Durham that night as he was warming up. And he reached a point where he couldn't handle it anymore. And right before he came in the game, he took the ball. And this kid threw like 95 miles an hour.
Oh, boy.
And he hucked the ball into the stands at the guy who was heckling him.
Did he hit him?
Missed him, hit a guy next to him on the side of the head. It ricocheted off that guy's head and out of the stadium. The guy goes down. The security comes running down. Our guy goes into the game, strikes out the side to win the game, and then gets arrested after the game as he leaves the clubhouse.
Oh
yes. Well, and then to add to the story, he gets suspended for a month, kicked out of the Carolina League for the rest of his life, told by the commissioner, "You're never going to come back and play in the Carolina League." He's a prospect, so they send him down to extended spring training. He gets to work out a bit. The major league team, the Royals, are going to play an exhibition game against the AAA team. They fly him from Florida up to Omaha to pitch in that game because it's an exhibition game, so he's allowed to play even though he's suspended. He pitches so well in that game that after his suspension is over, he gets called up to the big leagues.
Wow.
So he gets arrested, kicked out of the league, does something no one should ever do, could have killed someone, and ends up in the major leagues. Like, I don't know if there's any poetic justice in the world, but that was totally bizarre. And all of us were like, maybe we're supposed to throw a ball in the stands and we'll end up in the big leagues, but
Well, step one for success is throw a ball very hard at a fan, and then you go to jail. And then step 2, 3, 4. There's a lot of steps, but we have time for step 7. Let me play step 7 here.
Probably my best tip is tip number 8. Always keep bags of your own poop. Collect it throughout your stay.
Oh, it's tip 8. I hit the wrong tip. 8. That was the wrong tip. Okay.
Yes, for all the kids listening, please don't throw balls into the stands. That's a terrible thing to do. You should never do that, even though it worked out for this guy.
Okay. Now, you have written a new book here. What inspired you to write this new book? We're all in this together, creating a team culture of high performance, trust, and belonging.
Well, I wrote my 4th book, Bring Your Whole Self to Work, came out in 2018, and there's 5 principles in that book, and the 5th and final principle is create a championship team. And I decided after that book came out that I really wanted to double click on this. And I've been studying this and talking about this for years, but I hadn't actually written a book just about teamwork and team culture. And because of so many dynamics going on in our world right now, and the pace of business and the global nature of business and all of this, I really wanted to research what's going on right now in today's world, and what can leaders and what can team members and what can teams as a whole do to create the strongest culture possible. And so that was really the impetus. I had no idea this book was going to come out in the midst of a global pandemic that's unprecedented. And what's interesting, though, about it is so many people are uttering the phrase right now in a variety of contexts, we're all in this together. Which is absolutely true. But what I've learned over the years of working with great teams and being a part of some great teams is that what great teams have the ability to do in the midst of all the egos and all the agendas and all the ambitions and all the challenges and everything is unify around not only some common values and goals, but figure out how to put what's best for the team above simply what's best for all the individuals on the team. And when that happens, and it's more the exception than the rule, but it's really a magical experience. And what we know now from a lot of the research is it allows individuals to perform at the highest level when we can be focused on something bigger than just ourselves.
In your book, you discuss, in your new book, We're All in This Together, you break down these 4 key pillars. So what I'd like to do is go rapid fire. It's almost like soft toss, because I want the listeners to get enough of a glimpse of the book to want to go buy that thing. Because we are shameless capitalists here, okay? And but this book, folks, is great. It's a great book, but you got to buy the book.
Yeah.
And someone says, Clay, I'm on a tight budget. It's the quarantine. I say, listen here, buddy. You're sitting around, and you know what you're doing yet today? Nothing.
Yep.
And you know what you're doing tomorrow? Nothing. So get out there, get a copy of this book, and if you say, Clay, I'm super busy, Well, maybe you're busy going the wrong way. So listen to the pillars. See if this is a book you need to buy here. Pillar number 1, create psychological safety. What does that mean?
Basically, group trust. It means the group is safe enough to speak up, to take a risk, to disagree, so that we focus on creating an environment where that can happen.
Pillar 2, focus on inclusion and belonging. Why is this important?
Well, because look, one of the things we know from a lot of research is the more diverse a team is, the more successful it's going to be. And if we can do everything possible to make it as inclusive and ultimately get to a place where people really feel like they belonging, if we look at Maslow's hierarchy, right, it goes physiological needs, safety needs, belonging is the third on that sort of pyramid of 5 before we get to esteem and self-actualization. So everyone needs to feel like they belong. And for a team to really perform, there has to be a sense of belonging.
Anytime a guest mentions the word Maslow, they earn a mega point, which is not redeemable in this lifetime. But in the afterlife, we believe it's very, very valuable, very lucrative.
Glad to know.
Now, pillar number 3, embrace these sweaty palmed conversations. What are you talking about?
So a mentor of mine years ago said this thing to me, Clay. He said, Mike, you know what stands between you and the kind of relationships you really want to have with people? I said, what's that? He said, it's probably a 10-minute sweaty palm conversation you're too afraid to have. He said, if you get good at those 10-minute sweaty palm conversations, you'll have fantastic relationships. You'll build trust. You'll resolve conflict. You'll give feedback. You'll talk about the elephants in the room. Great teams need to create an environment where it's safe enough for us to disagree and challenge each other and talk about sensitive topics in a respectful way, in a productive way. But so often we avoid those conversations because they're uncomfortable, to our own detriment personally and to the detriment of the team.
Pillar number 4, care about and challenge each other. What is this pillar all about?
I had one of my former coaches, Dean Stotts, who was my pitching coach at Stanford, on my podcast about 6 months ago, and he said this great thing. He said, Mike, my philosophy, and he coached at Stanford for 37 years, incredible human being, has been a mentor of mine, friend for years, ton of success. He said, my philosophy for coaching was always this, Mike, I got to love them hard so I can push them hard. And I said, what do you mean by that, Dean? He said, I always knew that if I was going to get the most out of you as an athlete or any of the guys that I coached over all those years, you had to first and foremost know that I cared about you, that I had your back, that I believed in you as a human being. Then I would have permission to push you as hard as I needed to push you to get the most out of you. And when he said it, I was like, well, that's what great leaders do. That's what great mentors do. That's what great coaches do. And great teams create an environment where they do that for each other.
Mike Robbins, you are an A player. You are a great American, and I hope everybody out there picks up a copy of your book. We're all in this together, creating a team culture of high performance, trust, and belonging. And if we don't have enough people that buy the book, you may have to perfect the art of the knuckleball.
I'll keep working on it, man. It didn't work out so well years ago, but why not?
Awesome, brother. I appreciate you so much. I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thanks. You too. Thanks for having me.
And now, without any further ado, 3, 2, 1, boom!
Boom. Boom.